So it is another blustery, and I hesitate to say winter, but it's really not spring-like outside either. We had some thunderstorms move through this morning that took our power for a while, and so we are just getting a slow start to the day. The children are off to school, and since last week, all the garden things except the carrots and red beets have sprouted, and I've planted some broccoli and cauliflower and lettuce, and I tucked it all in with some hay, some straw. I tucked it all in with some straw to protect it from all the wind we get this time of year. But today we are going to work on these strawberries that were in my freezer from last year. And what we do with strawberries when we harvest them is we lay them on cookie sheets and flash freeze them. We just put them in the freezer, and then we dump them all into Ziploc bags, and they're frozen individually so they don't stick together. And then we can just grab hands full of frozen strawberries for our smoothies. Well, in the last year, since we last harvested strawberries, somebody left the freezer door open, and because the strawberries were up front, they thawed, and they all then refroze together on a chunk like this. So we have used all the strawberries out of the top that were loose, but now it's time to use these chunks of frozen strawberries. So my plan for these strawberries is that I am going to make some jelly from them. I'm going to make it the old-fashioned way, so it's just going to be strawberries and sugar and a little bit of lemon juice and no pectin. So this is going to be a no pectin jelly, just like my Mennonite grandma used to make. And yes, using pectin is the modern way to make jelly, but I find it to be a lot less convenient. It's just more hassle because every time that I've used pectin, I've had to refer to the instructions numerous times, and that's too much complication for me. And I know that my grandma made jelly so simply, so I've reverted back to making jellies without pectin just because it is more convenient for me and it seems more natural, and I understand the process better. And so because I understand the process better, I'm able to adjust and tweak according to my understanding of the recipes. So this is just going to, the lemon juice actually activates the natural pectin in most fruit. Strawberries already have pectin in them, so the lemon juice helps to activate that a little bit, and then you cook it together. And anyway, I'm going to use some of these strawberries to make a frozen strawberry dessert for our Friday night family dinner. But most of them I'm going to turn into jelly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of my strawberries into a pot so that I can start cooking them. And you can absolutely use this recipe with fresh strawberries as well. I'm using frozen strawberries, so my cook time is just going to be a little longer while the excess moisture cooks off of them. But if you have fresh strawberries, your cook time will just be less. You'll still arrive at the same point of readiness. It'll just take you less time if you have fresh strawberries. And it looks like I'm gonna need to go get a larger pot, and I'm gonna use this is where I'm going to make our strawberry cream pie. So I need 3 cups of pureed strawberries, but first I have to go get a larger pot. So these will all cook together, and I'm not too worried about my pot being over full at this point, because there's a lot of airspace down there that will be taken up once the strawberries defrost. So I'm just going to cook these over medium heat for now and let them, number one, we're just gonna get them defrosted and then we'll move on to the next step of our recipe. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and rinse out these Ziploc bags just like my grandma used to. And even though we probably won't use these for food storage the second time around, they are nice to have on hand for organizing purposes. And sometimes the children want a Ziploc bag, and instead of having them go get a brand new one, I can offer them some of these recycled Ziploc bags for their organization purposes or things like that. Next up, I'm going to wash my jars in hot soapy water. I know that most modern recipes tell you to sanitize your jars and keep your jars hot while you fill them, but I have never had an issue with bacteria or anything with just washing my jars well with hot soapy water. And then we are just going to rinse them and let them set in the drying rack, and there they will wait until our jelly is ready for the jars. So the strawberries are starting to defrost, and I don't know if you can see, but I've got a lot of liquid in there. And I'm just going to pour some of it off because that will save me some cooking time. Now if you have fresh strawberries, you won't need to do this. But I'm just gonna get rid of some of that water from defrosting. And I know it looks like a lot of strawberry juice, but it's mostly just water. And yeah, I need to take some out of here for my strawberry cream pie that I want to make. I'm gonna need 3 cups of puree to make my strawberry cream pies. So we're gonna call that good for now, and we're gonna put these back on the burner and start cooking them. So I have about 4 cups of strawberries in here, so I'm just gonna pour some of this into my pot where I'm cooking my strawberries. So the next thing I need to do is figure out how many strawberries I have, how many cups of strawberries I have. So if this is a 12-quart kettle and it's not quite half full, so half full would be 24 cups. So I bet I have about 18 cups of strawberries in here. And for every 2 cups of strawberries, I need 1 cup of sugar. So if I have 18 cups of strawberries, that means I need 9 cups of sugar in here. But before I add the sugar, I'm gonna take my immersion blender and just blend up the strawberries because that'll be easier than smashing them. So if you're using fresh strawberries, you will mash them to release some liquid so that you can start cooking them. And also, when you add sugar to your fresh strawberries, they're gonna release their water, so that'll give you some liquid to start cooking them in as well. But don't worry if yours doesn't look like this if you're using fresh strawberries. Just stick to the same ingredients and your strawberries will break down as they heat with the sugar. So we're gonna add our sugar. So what did I say? 9 cups of sugar. that's needed in here. 1, 2. So whenever I have shown jelly or jams or even homemade root beer recipes in the past on Instagram, never fails I get comments saying that's a lot of sugar. And yes, that's a lot of sugar for a recipe. However, you have to remember that we're not eating this by the spoonsful on a daily basis. This strawberry jam will get used once or twice a week on some sourdough toast. And that's like a teaspoon per person once or twice a week. So really when you divide it all out like that, it's really not that much sugar. So now we're going to add our lemon juice. So I've added my lemon juice, and I forgot to film that, but you need approximately 2 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice for every 1 cup of sugar and 2 cups of berries. And I'll make sure that this recipe is all in the description for you. So now we're just gonna cook this until it's as thick as I like, and then we're gonna put it into jars. And I'll be showing you the tips for deciding when it's done as we go. And I have little chunks of strawberries in there, and that's perfect for me because I do like some chunks of strawberries. And if you're using fresh strawberries, once you have enough liquid, you can throw it into the blender if you want a real smooth strawberry jam or strawberry preserves. But otherwise you can just mash it with like a potato masher and you'll have little chunks in it. So we've got this simmering real nice and a foam is starting to develop, and a lot of recipes will tell you to just scoop that foam off of the top, but I'm gonna tell you what my grandmother told me, and just a dab of butter is gonna keep your jelly from foaming up. So I'm just gonna stir a little bit of butter in, and we're gonna keep this simmering. And I'm gonna keep it turned pretty low because I wanna walk them away and make our strawberry cream pie, and I don't want this to boil over. Now, here's the other thing. I don't know what is called jam and what is called jelly and what is called preserves. It's all the same thing to me. I don't know the difference. So if I'm calling it one thing one time and another thing another time, it's just because it's all the same to me. We're making some yummy fruit spread to put on our toast and sourdough breads and peanut butter and jelly, and I don't know what it is. It's yummy fruit spread. So you can see in a matter of about 15 minutes how thick this is already. And you can see the foam was all the way up here, and I put butter in, and now the foam has gone all the way down. So that's the butter trick from Grandma, where you don't have to scrape the foam off the top all the time. So while our strawberry jam cooks, we're going to use some of this to make a dessert pie, and it's going to be strawberry cream pie. So I've got my pureed strawberries and my lemon juice in here. I'm going to add my sugar, and then I need 4 egg whites, and 4 egg whites is approximately ½ a cup. And these are egg whites that I had saved from yesterday when I made pasta and used only the yolks. So I'm going to put about half of those in, since that was about a cup. And I need my lid here. So I'm gonna start working on making the pie crust for our strawberry cream pie while my cream mixture is chilling in the refrigerator and my strawberries are cooking. So now it's time to start washing together some of these dishes while my strawberry cream mixture has been transferred to my Bosch mixer and it is going to whip up nice and foamy. So I chilled this in the refrigerator because when I made it in the blender, it got too warm and then it wouldn't whip up. But now I think it's whipped up enough and we're gonna fold this into our cream mixture. And look at that, my bowl is just about not big enough. For our pies, we need some whipped cream, and cream whips better when everything is cold. So I had my blender, the top of my blender in the freezer so that it is cold. And just like that, we have whipped cream. It took about 1 minute to turn that into whipped cream. So now we're just gonna fold that cream in. It ended up being on the bottom. You can't see it real well. Now it's time to put these pies in the freezer, and they only need about 12 hours to be ready to eat. But I'm gonna save these for Friday night's family dinner, so these will be in the freezer for a good 3 days, which is just fine. So you can see that my strawberry jam is starting to thicken up. If I can get this to focus on something other than the steam, because it's boiling like a thick pudding now. So we're gonna do one of our tests and see if it's thick enough, see if it's ready to set up. Had this plate in the freezer, and we're just gonna drop a little bit of jelly on there. And we're gonna let it cool off on there. And then we're gonna push it and see if it wrinkles. You can see it wrinkling a little bit. So although there was a little bit of a wrinkle on the cold jelly, I'm just going to continue to let it simmer because I want it to be real nice and thick. And at this point, even though it's a little thick, it'll still get quite a bit thicker. So it's been about 15 minutes and our pies are in the oven. So we're gonna do another spoon test. And what I'm looking for is right there at the edge, you can see. Let me see if I can get my camera to focus. So maybe you can see it better with this little, where it pushes in. And it gives little wrinkles right there at the edge. And the jelly also stays together on a pile and it doesn't run out. So I'm gonna say this is good. You can see how this jelly that's cool is staying together on a pile and not running out flat like it did 15 minutes ago. So this is ready to ladle into jars. Okay, so we're ready to start ladling them into pint jars. And I will be using my 4 jars canning lids. I have had such a good success rate with these lids. I will put my affiliate link into the description for the 4 jars canning lids. So one of the things that happened during 2020 is that we stopped being able to buy canning lids and supplies just wherever we wanted to. And then the ones that we did find were cheaply made and didn't work like we were used to. But the beautiful people at 4 jars have changed that. And last year was my first year using 4 jars. And I think out of the 500 jars that I canned, 500 plus, because we stopped counting at 500 quarts. We didn't count all the pints and smaller jars of things that we canned. I had less than half a dozen jars that didn't seal, and most of those were because there was something wrong with the jar and not the lid. So I cannot tell you how grateful I am for 4 jars canning lids. So this method of canning is called hot pack. And what I'm doing is I've got my clean jars, but they've just been resting back there in the drying rack. They're not hot, they're just clean. And I'm ladling simmering jelly, like you gotta keep your pot simmering. I'm ladling simmering jelly into jars. And then I wipe the edge of the full jar. Then I put on a lid and a ring, and the heat of this jelly is going to soften the rubber ring on the lid, and as the jelly cools, it's going to create a vacuum, and that vacuum is going to seal that lid right down onto the jar, and then it's done. sealed. And that's, I could feel it when I wiped right there. There's a little crack. So I'm going to pour this all back in my pot because I don't want it to have cooled off too much by the time I pour it into another jar. So there's our 8.5 pints of strawberry jam, and we're just gonna let that set and cool. So the children will be home from school soon, and I've set out their snack. I've got some sourdough bread, some butter, and I used up my leftover pie dough and made some strawberry jelly roll-ups for them. But I wanted to show you how beautiful and thick this jelly is. It's been in the refrigerator for a couple hours and it's just right.
Whoops. I got food. What? Because I think that is all.
Good morning. It is rainy and dreary outside this morning. Thunderstorms are moving through and kids are off to school, and I'm gonna finish this jelly video so I can sit down and edit it. All my jars sealed except one. And okay, backing up, here's a couple things about jelly without pectin. Because you cook it so much longer, it's gonna get darker because the sugar caramelizes. So these, and I don't have real good light in here this morning, so they look really dark, but they're not actually that dark. But I'm really happy. It turned out nice and thick. And so when one of my jelly jars doesn't seal, you know, I hot pack them. I don't can them. It's usually because one of two things. Either there was something stuck on the rim, or the jelly was too cold when I put it in the jar and it didn't cool off and create enough of a vacuum. Or it could have just been that I didn't turn it tight enough, and as it created a vacuum, there was air leaking in that prevented it from sealing. So no worries though. There is, number one, strawberries are high acid, so we don't worry about botulism. And number two, there's enough of sugar in it to prevent it from spoiling very fast at all. So even though this jar was sitting out on the counter unsealed overnight, I'm not gonna worry about it because there's so much sugar in here to preserve it. It would probably be okay on the counter for a month because of the sugar in it. But what I'm doing, because I wanted to show this, normally I would just put this jar that didn't seal, I would just put this one in the refrigerator and we would use this first. But I wanted to show you how to seal them. So all I'm doing is I have a pot of water here, and I've got water covering most of the product. And I'm gonna bring this to a boil, and I'm gonna boil it for 5 minutes. As I boil it, the jelly will heat up again. So that's all we wanna do, is we wanna heat up the jelly, and that's gonna soften that rubber seal. And then as the jelly cools off, we will create a vacuum. And I took the lid off, wiped everything, turned it tight, and put it back on, tried to eliminate anything that may have gone wrong in the first place. So now we're just gonna boil this, heat the jelly so that it can cool off and create a vacuum, and seal the jar. So these pies have been in the freezer since yesterday afternoon, and I'm gonna cut into them and show you a slice.